What's up, gamers? Welcome to Game Design Game. I'm Matt, and I like to design games for fun. And in this channel, I show you some of my game designs, as well as some tips and tricks for you if you want to design games yourself. This is episode 4, and I'm going to be exploring the math of game design. Things about cards, dice, token pools, spinners. Anytime you want some randomization in a game, there's going to be a little bit of a math element to it, and I'll show you some of that. We won't delve too deeply into the mathematics of probability. There are master classes and better places to learn that than here. But this is going to be focused specifically on math as it relates to the design of board games and role-playing games. Game design game. In this episode, we're going to be talking about randomness in games. There are many games that don't use any random features. That's perfectly fine, and they're quite fun. But games that do, it's important if you're designing one to have an understanding of how those random elements affect gameplay and how players interact with them. And so that's what I'm going to cover in this episode, is a little bit about how to think about random elements, how to get into the math without getting too deep. This is not going to be a course on probability. And I'll talk about how to apply random features to game design, specifically with how I used it in Storyboard, which you can find out more about Storyboard in episode 3. Link is below. So when thinking about random features in game design, there are a few different ways to approach it, and some games use all of them, some use just one. The first one I want to talk about is random setup, in which you perhaps deal out a board or give players different elements at the start of the game in some random fashion, but once the game begins, the players really don't have any interaction with the random features after that point. So this could be a secret role game like Agendas, where people's starting position is random, but then the gameplay is not random at all. There are many examples of games like that. This could be setting up a map. Many games, the board is assembled in some fashion that is random in some way. Settlers of Catan is a very well-known example of a randomized board setup, though Settlers of Catan also has random elements during play. Another way to put randomness in your game is to apply a random condition at the start of a turn, maybe every player's turn, maybe at the start of a round, and each player works with it. So this would be, for example, placing a bunch of options available for the players to choose. Tokens they want to purchase or acquire, or numbers that are rolled at the start of a turn that affect how the player plays. So this per turn randomness, the randomness happens, and then the player's choices come after the fact. They might be able to pick from multiple features, or they might have no choice at all and just have to take the randomness that was dealt to them and see what happens next. A third way to use randomness in game design is randomness to reveal the outcome of a player's choice. So on a player's turn, maybe they decide some action they want to take, and then randomness reveals the results of it. So for example, the player may choose to draw a card off of a discard pile or off the top of the deck, and if choosing off the top of the deck, they get a random card. So they didn't know when they made the choice, but they found out in play. There are other ways to inject randomness into games, but those are the three most common ones, the three predominant ones, and most of the rest are variations on those themes or combinations of them. So when you're designing your own game, if there are random elements, you need to be thoughtful about which of these you're employing, and if it feels like your game is too random, possibly switching to a different type of randomness can help improve the gameplay. So, for example, the difference between a randomness before the player choice or randomness coming from the player choice can make a very different set of gameplay and strategy for how players choose what they want to do. The former, where the randomness happens first, the player has more control over how their turn goes. They understand the conditions, and maybe it isn't ideal for them, but they can work with what they've got. Whereas if they have to make a choice and then live by the random results, it feels to players a little more random. Even that tiny shift between randomness before choice and randomness after choice can really make a big difference to players. So there's a fourth aspect of randomness, which comes from the players during play, in that when players have choices to make, it's hard for other players to predict the choices and why they make them, and it will feel sometimes random to the players who aren't making the choice. And possibly even the player who is making a choice might do it with a little bit of randomness or chaos in mind, or they might have multiple choices that seem fine, and their choice, may surprise other players. I'm not going to be exploring that too deeply. While it gives a feeling of randomness, it is entirely under the player's control, and that doesn't leave much room for analysis or planning. Players can inject chaos or order on top of many different game features that you develop. So now I'm going to talk about different random elements that you can incorporate into your game design. And I'm going to start with some simple ones, and then one at a time show you how to think about them, how to figure out the math of how they work in your game. And then I will build up to some more complicated combinations and examples. So the one I want to talk about first is tokens. Tokens is abstract. It really just means a collection of elements, typically with some repetition, but they could all be unique. So dice are tokens, cards are tokens, but when I say tokens, I mean something a little bit more abstract and collective. So the idea with tokens typically in a game is they represent aspects of play. They could represent resources in a resource collection game. They could represent actions available. They could represent different types of units that come into conflict that have different effects and abilities. So when talking about randomness with tokens in a game, typically it means that you might be drawing some number of tokens from a pool that contains different types of tokens. And assuming that you're drawing blindly, that means that there's a random element involved. You could get an unexpected mix. You could get things that you want, things you don't want. And so tokens are a fairly simple random element in terms of how they affect the game. When tokens are mixed, the one that is most dominant or most numerous in the mix is the one you're most likely to draw. That's pretty intuitive, I hope. And ones that are few, infrequent, rare, they are the least likely to draw from the pool. But if the tokens come out of the pool faster than they go into the pool over time, eventually they will all come out, including those rare ones. And so the randomness, in effect, is who's going to end up with it. But in many games, tokens are going in, tokens are coming out, and so there's this unpredictable element of when you're going to get what. So a common game people are familiar with, Scrabble. The pool of letters in a Scrabble game, they are essentially tokens. Some of the letters are repeated and are common. Other letters appear just once. And so this pool of letters that a player draws from is essentially a random draw. It's got probabilities based on the frequency of letters, but that in turn is also affected by the letters that have already been pulled out of the pool. And players don't necessarily know which letters are in the pool and which aren't. All they know is which letters have been played on the Scrabble board. So with that understanding of probability, they can make predictions about what they're going to get. So I'm going to bring up a spreadsheet and talk a little bit about the math of token pools and how that might affect how you design a game using tokens. So here's a spreadsheet program. You can use whichever one is available to you. They all work in similar ways. And a spreadsheet's a very powerful tool for exploring probability because it does math and it can do columns and rows, and most of them can put these into visual forms, charts and graphs. I may or may not show you that charts and graphs don't always help in game design. So showing you a mostly blank sheet here. The way that token pools work is that you have some set of tokens. So I'm just going to call them like red, blue, yellow. Let's just say there's 3 different types right now. If they are in a shared pool and you're drawing out of there, the number of tokens in each pool really matters. So I'm going to keep the pool small while we're doing our initial exploration. So we'll say there's 6 red, 3 blue, and 1 yellow in the pool, and the yellow is really valuable. So a thing we'll want to be tracking is the total number of tokens in the pool at any given time. And there's 10 total tokens available. This can change over time. So the chance to draw each token is the number of them currently in the pool divided by the total number of tokens altogether. So dragging down the formula does the math for each of them. So it's showing up 0.6, 0.3, 0.1. I will change this to show you in percentages. So 60% chance if you're drawing a single token, 60% chance of drawing a red one, 30% chance of drawing a blue one, 10% chance of drawing a yellow one. That's really the key of it, is you can work this chart out based on all of the tokens you plan to include and hypothetical situations, especially in a game where the token pool is being added to during play. It's hard to predict a specific situation, but you know the starting situation, and you can track the total tokens in the game. So this can at least give you some idea of how token pools are going to work. And you can examine what happens under different situations. So if it's very easy to add more red tokens into the pool, now there's 14 tokens, and the chance of drawing reds out of the pool is much higher now. Went from 60 up to 71, and the chance of others went down because we didn't add any more of those. But conversely, after drawing a few reds out of the pool, so if we go from 6 down to 4, or in that case from 10 down to 4, the chance of drawing red is now down to 50%, and the chance of drawing the blue and the yellow go up. So someone might draw a blue out. And again, these chances change dynamically over play. If we go back to our starting condition, 6 red, 3 blue, 1 yellow, and somebody gets the yellow right away, well, now nobody has a chance of getting a yellow. It's already been taken. 0% chance of getting the yellow a second time because there was only one in the pool to begin with. Next, I want to talk about cards. Both playing cards and cards can be used in a variety of board games, role-playing games. Like tokens, the odds of drawing particular cards changes over time. Cards that you draw are gone from the deck unless they have duplicates, and cards that have not been drawn in some time get more and more likely to appear. So in that aspect, it works similar to tokens. So typically, the only difference between cards and tokens is really just impression. Mathematically, they work very much the same. Tokens can be laid out in a pool or in a stack. Cards can be laid out in a pool or in a stack. So for purposes of this discussion, I'm going to focus my card talk on playing cards specifically, or things that are very similar to them. So an Uno deck is very similar to a deck of playing cards. It's got suits and numbers. And if you think about it, the suits and numbers, they're very similar to the token example I just showed, where we had a color and a size. It's just two features paired together. But playing cards come up in many situations, both in standard traditional playing card games of many sorts. But playing cards also can appear in some kinds of board games and even role-playing games. Or those games might be designed in a way that the deck of cards is very similar to a deck of playing cards. So I'm just going to show that because it's more familiar to some people than tokens, especially if they haven't played token-based board games. So typically the way people interact with cards is by shuffling them and putting them in a deck. So the shuffling of the deck is essentially a setup event, though in some games it's possible to go through the deck multiple times and you have to shuffle when you reach the bottom of the deck, shuffle in the discards and go again. But essentially it's randomness that has been decided ahead of time, and while the players don't know the order of the deck necessarily, so to them it feels random every turn, and for purposes of gameplay it is random every turn, even though you're not shuffling the deck every turn necessarily. You'll find other sources online that talk about how shuffling affects the order of a deck. The most recent study I've heard says that 7 standard shuffles of a standard playing card deck of 52 cards is about as random as it ever needs to get. Even if you start with a completely unsorted deck, if you shuffle it 7 times, it's pretty random. So that doesn't affect your game design too much, but does mean you don't need to obsess about re-randomizing cards. The shuffling randomizes them. What players do with the cards if they have choices during play randomizes many of the results as well. So things go into the discard pile or things stay in players' hands. That in itself injects a little bit of randomness into the future of the deck. So if it gets shuffled a second time, things in players' hands don't get shuffled in typically. So everyone knows what cards are. I'm not going to get too deeply into it. I'm just going to show you a little bit of math in the spreadsheet, and not even a full deck. So let me switch over to the spreadsheet program for you. So here you can see I've already set up a spreadsheet with a shortened deck. So cards going from 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace, and I have the 4 suits represented. So only 20 cards out of a standard 52 card playing deck, just because it's a little easier to see the math and control it, and it doesn't ultimately change how you interact with the probability math, especially if you're designing your own deck. So as in our token example, the cards are represented by 2 features, a rank and a suit. And in play, typically, these things matter to players in different ways. So in a fresh deck, the odds are equal of getting any particular suit, and the odds are equal of getting any particular number. Now 20% is because we only have these 5 different ranks. So if you have the full 13 cards per suit, the odds are much closer to about 7 or 8% per rank. I included in here this column that says in the deck, and this is just a way to test different situations. Again, in playing cards, because it's so random, you don't really set up situations like this, but it can show you over time what happens. So if a couple of players are already holding on to aces and they're no longer in the deck, the chance of drawing a new ace goes down. In some game designs, information might be available to players. They might be able to see cards that have been played or at least have some knowledge of what's been discarded, and it can affect future play if they have a sense of something has happened a lot. So if, for example, if they've actually seen that 3 out of the 4 aces are out of play, then they know the chance of getting that last remaining ace should be pretty low. So there's not a ton to say about cards. In game designs, one of the nice things about cards is that you can put a lot of information on them. You can have more than 2 pieces of meaningful information, right? More than just a rank or a suit. You can have individual cards that have a massive effect on the game, or you can have very common repeated cards, much as like we were looking at in the token example above, that show up again and again, and just because you saw one doesn't mean it's not in the deck anymore, just reduces the odds that it appears in the deck. So if you build your deck with duplicate cards, that changes the odds a little bit like what we saw with tokens. So I'm not going to get too deeply into this. The key for tracking the odds in a deck of cards is knowing how many of the card you're looking for is still in the deck, how many cards total are in the deck, and you can do that sort of calculation for any feature on any particular card. Typically, there's not a lot of influence that players have over those odds, and they may not even have the information to really track this. So it tends to only matter if you're going to weigh certain cards differently or have duplicate cards in a deck. So most people, when they think about randomness in board games and role-playing games, they think about dice. Compared to cards and tokens, dice have an advantage in that their odds don't change over time. The result of the last player's roll shouldn't influence the result of the next player's roll. Nothing is added or taken away from the dice unless you specifically design a game with that as some interesting new feature. So that means that when you are examining the probability of dice mechanics in your games, you have a more solid understanding than you might otherwise in a card game, because you don't have to try and worry about the effects over time as for example, a token pool or a deck of cards changes over time. The dice just do what they do. You can run the numbers once and have a good idea of how to apply that to your game design. So an example of a game that uses dice is something like Yahtzee, where you roll 5 dice and you apply those dice to different scoring options, and over time you're trying to maximize your score. And you know what makes this challenging is that you don't know what you're going to roll in the future. You're not changing the odds of anything, so you always have to apply your current random roll to what you've rolled in the past. In Yahtzee, you have the option to re-roll some dice, and so you have to evaluate your options each time you play and each turn. While the dice are not changing, the options available of what to do with them do change, and this influences how everyone plays Yahtzee. And what's interesting is that even people who don't really understand the math of Yahtzee develop an intuition for what's easy and common and what's difficult to achieve. And the scoring boxes reflect that. Rolls that are more difficult to achieve offer higher scores, typically. And of course, the Yahtzee itself, 5 of a kind, is a very difficult roll, even using the reroll options. And that's what makes the game compelling, even when you're playing solo, is that it's always different, and there's a little bit of course, luck, but also some informed decision-making about how to use your rerolls and how to apply your scores each turn. So next I'm going to open up the spreadsheet and show some dice probability and how to play with that. And it gets especially interesting when you're tracking multiple dice rather than just looking at one die at a time. So let me move over to the spreadsheet now. All right, so there are a few ways to work out dice probabilities in a spreadsheet program. One is to sort of follow the pattern that I showed with tokens and cards and just spell out all the results. That sort of approach might be helpful if you're using custom dice that have multiple features per side, and it might make it a little easier to track how all of those different sides and different elements per side play together. I'm not going to focus on that too much. I'm going to focus on standard dice with just numbers on them. The one everyone's familiar with, the standard six-sided die. And it has 6 sides and 16.66666% per side, rounded to 16.7 here. So when you're just rolling a single die, your result can total from 1 to 6. And this is, now I got a little fancy with my math here. So ultimately, this is just, there's one side with that value, and there are 6 total sides. So if you want to play with dice with different numbers of sides, you can just divide by your total number of sides. All right, so that's when you roll a single die. Now, how do you track the math when you're rolling 2 dice? So it can be a little intimidating to people who are not comfortable with probability math. So one way to do it, especially if you're trying to wrap your head around it, is you can list out all of the results somewhere. So a way to help you picture this and make sure that you're doing it right is to treat the dice as if they are different colors and that you're tracking them differently. So let's just say that we have a red die and a blue die. So you could have a 1 and a 1, a 1 and a 2, or you could have the red die be a 2 and the blue die be a 1. And so those both total 3 if you're adding them together. But there's 2 ways to get a 3 and only 1 way to get a 1. So I would recommend if you're using this approach where you want to see all of the options, imagine that the dice are different colors, and that will help to ensure that you don't get confused about which cases you have and haven't tracked. The downside of this approach is when you get more than 2 dice, things start to get really big and complicated. Even 3 six-sided dice, there are 36 different combinations to roll 2 six-sided dice. There are 216 different combinations when you're rolling 3 dice. And so that's a lot to track. That's a lot to try and write down and still have any useful mental image of what you're getting from that. So I don't really recommend that approach other than to try and understand where these numbers come from. If you look at it that way, that can help you improve how you think about these numbers. If you're using a spreadsheet program like this, there's a somewhat easier way to do the math of it. So, and that is, as I track these 1 die, 2 dice, and 3 dice, I'm going to treat it as if the dice always roll in order. They don't. You roll them simultaneously, but mathematically, it's no difference. It's only different to human players because they can't tell which die is the first one and which die is the second one, unless, again, you color them differently. And then if you think about the first die is the red one, the second die is the blue one, the third die is the yellow one, this method I'm about to show you makes a little more sense and is a little easier to track. So the first issue we've got when we're going to be tracking 2 dice is that the total result doesn't go from 1 to 6, it goes from 2 to 12. So to really represent that, I'm going to have to expand my table here. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is just move this. All right, so let's go ahead and extend this out. And because I'm also going to be doing 3 dice, I'm going to extend this all the way to 18, which if you roll 3 6s, you could get as high as 18. So this has stretched things out quite a bit. probably compressed them too much, so I'll get some numbers in there and then I'll realign these. But for now, we can see them. So for purposes of setting up the spreadsheet math, the way to think about rolling 2 dice and adding them together is to say, what did the first die roll and what did the second die roll, and we add those together. So the chances of getting a total of 1 are 0. I'm just going to fill that in manually here. But the chances of getting a 2, so the chance for any particular result is this 16.7%. So when we're rolling 2 dice, the chance to get a 2 is the chance that the first die rolled a 1. And I'm going to grab it out of this prior column. And we're going to multiply that by the chance that the second die got a 1, which I could grab it out of this column, 1 die 1, but I'm going to grab it out of here and add this $sign notation, which means that it's not going to move around if I drag this formula around. This will become more important when I move to 3 dice. So, chance that we got a 1 on the first die and a 1 on the second die. Chance that we got a 3 is the chance that we got a 1 on the first die and a 2 on the second die, or that we got a 2 on the first die and a 1 on the second die. So you'll see I'm using this C11 twice. That's just the chance for getting any particular result on 1 die. So the way I'm building this formula will make it easy to extend to multiple dice later. But in any case, we're just tracking all of the different ways to get a 3, and there's only 2. So it's a 1 followed by a 2 or a 2 followed by a 1. When we get to the chance to roll a 4, there's even more ways to do it. So a 1 with a 3. And then we add to that the chance of getting a 2 followed by another 2. We add to that the chance of getting a 3 followed by a 1. Those are the only ways to get a 4. You see our chances are going up each time. We'll talk a little bit about that. To get a 5, it's the chance of getting a 1 multiplied by the chance of getting a 4. Add to that the chance of getting a 2 multiplied by the chance of getting a 3. Add to that the chance of getting a 3 multiplied by the chance of getting a 2. Add to that the chance of getting a 4 multiplied by the chance of getting a 1. Chance to get a 6. Follow the same pattern. 1 and 5. 2 and 4. 3 and 3. 4 and 2. 1 and 1. 7. Chance for first die was 1 multiplied by chance to get a 6. Plus 2 and 5. Plus 3 and 4. Plus 4 and 3. Plus 5 and 2. 6 and 1. So you see there's 6 different ways to get a 7. And they're based on the first die rolling anywhere from 1 to 6, and the second die rolling essentially the opposite in this case. So now, when we're doing the 8, if we followed our pattern from before, we'd say the chance of rolling a 1 times the chance of rolling a 7, but there's no chance for the second die to roll a 7. So now we're skipping the 1 case, and we're starting with a 2. 2 and 6, 3 and 5, 4 and 4, 5 and 3, 4 6 and 2. And again, there's no way to have gotten a 7 on that first die, so you'll notice that the chance of rolling a 6 and the chance of rolling an 8 are equal, and that's because each of them combines 5 options on the first die with 5 options on the second die. And likewise, as we go to 9, we can't have rolled a 2 on either die. So we start at a 3. Because that makes sense to take it around here, so 4 and chance of 10. The smallest die has to be a 4. Or smallest die can't be over 4. And when we get up to a 12, the only way to get that is with a 6 and a 6. And so you'll see, as I pointed out with the 6 and the 8, the 2 and the 12 have equal odds, the 3 and the 11 have equal odds, and our total over here works out to 100%. And that's just an easy way for me to be confident that I didn't make a mistake over here. If you're designing your game, you will want to understand this. If you want different events to happen based on the results of your roll, you should be aware that when you're rolling and adding dice together, not every result is the same. So if you were building some random event system based on this, you should be aware that whatever happens on a 7 is the most likely event, and things that happen on a 2 or a 12 are going to be very unlikely. So what I've just shown you works for calculating the probabilities, but it's pretty tedious, as you've already seen. So I'm going to show a trick that works in spreadsheets and makes things a lot easier. So the idea behind the trick is that because we know each new die has only 6 possibilities, what we can do, instead of checking each chance, each side against a previous total, is we can check that chance of each of the values against all 6 of the prior values at the same time. And let me show you a formula that does that. But to really make this easier, what we need to do is account for the values that you can't actually roll. So totals of 0 are going to factor into this spreadsheet formula. So what I'm going to do is insert a few more columns here in front of the 1. All right, so why did I do that? Let me show you with the 2 dice totals. I'm going to wipe these all out. So remember, they go 2.8% up to 16.7% down to 2.8%. Going to wipe these all out. And so a new way to calculate the 2 dice total is to say it's the chance of getting that any single value. Sorry, the chance of getting any single value from 1 to 6 multiplied by the sum of, so if you roll a 1, you want to pair that with a 1, but if you roll a higher number than a 1, you're going to add that or multiply that by nothing. So I'm going to actually take all 6 of these entries, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and the 1, and say in order to roll a 2, it's any result on the new die multiplied by the sum of these 6 columns on the old die. And when I do it this way, I get my 2.8% in a new way. But what this allows me to do is drag the formula across. I'm going to drag it once and show you the difference. So I drag it over to the 3. I still get that 5.6 value, and that's because of the way spreadsheets work. This single value target that's currently sitting in H11 doesn't change. The $H, $11 means stay where it is. But these D through I columns changed, and I'll show you again what the column 2 looked like. It went C through H for the result of 2. It went D through I for the result of 3. And I'm going to drag this all the way up through 12. And now we see we got our 2% up to our 16.7% down to our 2.8%. And all much more quickly than the other way that I calculated it. And even better, this is going to work for our 3 dice total. Now again, with 3 dice, there's no chance of getting a 1 or a 2. And the chance to get a 3 is this, again, the same value, and I add these dollar signs so that it's not going to shift when I drag a formula across. Multiply that again by a sum, and in this case, so I'm totaling a 3. The sum I care about is from 2 dice, a total of 2, the minimum value, and then drag it to get 6 different values, right? So this is if I roll a 2 and on the new die a 1, and if I roll anything higher than a 1 on the new die, I don't want to add anything in there. So I'm probably not explaining it too clearly, but we're essentially doing all of the math that I showed you before, but we're doing it with this sum formula and 1 multiplication instead of tallying each option separately. And the advantage of doing this is I can take this new formula I've made, and I'm going to drag it all the way across to the 18. And you see my sum rises, it gets up to the 12.5% at 10 and 11, and my total value here is still 100%. And this was a much easier way to do that, and the same idea can even extend to 4 dice. So I'm going to drop this down real quickly, and with 4 dice you can't roll any total up through 3, and once more, I'm going to take this single value result. And honestly, this doesn't have to be the formula. I could just use 1/6. And then take the result of 3 and a total of 6 results from the prior 3 dice total. And so I'm saying whatever's on the new die times any of the 6 options on the prior die. Oops, and this does not have the percentage formatting. Let's see if I can hopefully carry that formatting across. Now the total with 4 dice can go up to 24, so I'm not going to get it all the way out to 100%. I'm going to carry it up through 18, and just double checking. Okay, it just was squashed a little bit. There we go. So the value of 14 is the most likely, and if I extend this out to 4, I'm going to also have to extend out my total calculation later. Okay, so the sum actually did go all the way out to 24. And so now I have my new 4 dice curve, and it was much easier than the way I showed you initially with 2 dice. Okay, another example I wanted to show is the storyboard dice roll. If you've seen episode 3, link is below. Storyboard uses a system of independent dice, each trying to hit a target number. Each die that hits the target number is a success. So there's 2 ways that we're going to look at this information. So Storyboard uses a 10-sided die, which I showed in that episode. Each result from 1 to 10 has a 10% chance of happening. And the overall chance of success, if you're rolling a single die, your target number is 2. Everything from 2 to 10 is a success. A 1 is the only way to fail. That's 90%. And in the formula, I could calculate this as 11 minus the target number divided by the 10 sides of the die. And I could carry that formula all the way across, and it gives me the odds of a single die succeeding for every target number. So very simple formula there. Rolling a second die, you can calculate that as the chance that the first die is a success, in which case it doesn't matter what the second die rolls, or the chance that the first die fails, which is 1 minus, or 100% minus, the chance of succeeding. So if that first die failed, then if the second die succeeds at the same target number, then that's also a success. And so if I take this formula and I stretch it across, this shows the odds of success on 2 dice. So we went from 90 up to 99%, and even at a target number of 10, we went from 10% up to 19%. And in a similar fashion, each one of these is going to extend down as we roll more dice. Now this 100% isn't actually 100%, it's just so high that the rounding error shows it. It's 99.99 and 99.999. So the odds get very good as you roll more dice, such that rolling 5 dice, even at a target number of 10, there's a 41% chance that one of them will be a 10. So you can see how under the simple storyboard dice rolling rules, the odds go up really quickly. So 1 die, 50% at a target number of 6. 2 dice, 50% at a target number of 8. 3 dice, 50% near a difficulty 9. And so the odds get really good really fast. And then the other factor to look at when doing dice where each one is counted separately is the expected number of successes. And expected number of successes is if you roll multiple dice, are you expecting to get 1 success, 2 successes, or no successes? So with a single die, the expected number of successes is very similar to the chance of getting a success at all, which is to say you have a slightly less than 100% chance of getting 1 success. And then as you roll more dice, you're really just adding the expected number of successes for the previous die with the number of successes for the new die that you're adding. So with 2 dice, you'll see, oh, this just essentially doubles the expected value from a single die. And this is going to carry forward all the way. So with 5 dice, you could get as many as 5 successes. Your expected value is slightly less than that, so 4.5 on average successes. And down to with 5 dice at a target number of 10, you should expect to get 1 success every other roll. And so this expected target number system, a very simple way to anticipate how many successes you're going to get. And as I explained in episode 3 in Storyboard, 2 successes is considered quite good. It's exactly what you wanted to achieve. And at target number 6, 4 dice is pretty good at getting you those 2 successes on most rolls. And at 5 dice, you can get that up to target number of 7. So that's dice. Another version of randomness would be spinners. So this is essentially a circular wheel of outcomes and some physical element that you knock with your finger or whatever goes in a circle and it results in a single outcome. This would be also similar to roulette or Wheel of Fortune. All of those are spinner type randomness. I'm not going to delve into spinners too much because ultimately, for purposes of probability calculations, they work just like dice. There are, of course, other ways to handle randomness, too many to go into. All right, so those are some examples of how to evaluate randomness using cards or dice. There are many other ways to look at randomness and how they apply to games. Role-playing games in particular have a lot of different dice evaluation techniques. Too many for me to go over all of them in this video. So I may do a future video specifically focused on role-playing game dice systems. I'll do that sometime in the future. In any case, I hope that for now this has given you a good primer on how to look at probabilities and how to use spreadsheets to evaluate the odds of game design elements that might help you when you're designing your own games at home. Rather than add a new rule this episode, I'm going to update a existing rule. Last episode, as I was reviewing them, I realized that the Hello bonus rule A didn't have a carry forward the way most of the other bonus rules did. And since still no one has engaged with the Hello rule, I'm going to make it a really tempting big bonus. So here's how the new bonus rule A works. Very similar to before, but it's going to have some carry forward points. So when you are one of the first 3 people to use my episode greeting in your chat comment, you get a bonus in that episode equal to the episode number. So this is episode 4. You would get a +4 bonus for being among the first 3 to participate in the Hello rule. There's a special exception to that, which is episode 0. And so for episode 0, the first 3 people to say hello get the bonus points equal to the number of episodes that have already been posted at that time. So there are, with this being episode 4, if you go over to episode 0 and post the correct greeting there, that would be worth 5 points because there are episode 4 plus episode 0. There are 5 total episodes. So you could claim a +5 bonus if you do it right now. That bonus may go up until the first 3 people claim it. So those are for the people who are among the first 3 to use my greeting. For everyone else, whether you use my greeting or not, you get a carry forward bonus. So having ever used the hello rule in any episode, you get to carry forward equal to your best prior hello bonus score. So if you say hello in this episode is worth a 4-point bonus, and next episode it's still worth a 4-point bonus, even if you don't score the hello. Even if you don't get the hello in among the first 3 in the next episode. So that bonus will carry forward through all other scorings. And I hope that makes the hello rule a little more tempting as a way to get big bonuses somewhere down the line. Next time on Game Design Game, I'm going to show you how to make custom storage boxes for your cards or just about anything else you want to store related to your game, using materials you probably already have at home: paper, scissors, tape, things like that. And I'm going to try to make something I haven't made before, a special card cycling randomizer. I'll talk more about what that's for, but it's a project that I've had in mind for a while that I haven't actually tried to make. So it'll be a little crafting episode. Yeah, until next time, gamers. Later.